Charmander, as always in the background, coming at you with a new Yu-Gi-Oh video. And in today's Yu-Gi-Oh video, we're going to be having a discussion talking about 5 very powerful cards in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! So powerful, in fact, that if they were to come back into the current Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game, they would absolutely break it, it would be destroyed, and it would literally not be anything that it currently is like. So today, guys, we're going to be looking at 5 banned cards that are currently banned in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, and in my personal opinion, these 5 cards should never come back. For a lot of reasons, just basically because of how simple their effects are, how powerful their effects are, how some of them can actually change the entire game in someone's favor just by simply activating it, and just the amount of advantage you could actually get from some of these cards. I personally feel like all 5 of these cards that we're going to be talking about in this video today are absolutely broken, should never come back, and we're going to talk about them. So, guys, without further ado, let's actually get into talking about the 5 cards on the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG ban list that should never be brought back into the TCG. So, the first card we're going to be talking about on this list is a card that you've probably seen in bulk, you've probably seen and skimmed over, you could have not even seen it if you're a really new Yu-Gi-Oh! Player, and you're just like, oh, what's this card? This card looks really interesting, and it looks like a giant tree, basically. And this card is Fiber Jar. Fiber Jar is a card that's been on the ban list for a very, very long time. And this card definitely can never come back into the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. And that's because its simple flip effect, which is each player shuffles all cards from their hands, field, and graveyard into the deck, then draw 5 cards. Now, you're probably thinking, it's a reset button, you basically reset the game. But guys, if you really want to know why this card shouldn't be coming back into the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, is because, well, yes, it's a reset button, but it doesn't reset everything. Now, there's a couple of scenarios that I'm going to tell you why, for specific reasons to why this card shouldn't come back. The first scenario is, say your opponent is on 1,000 life points, and you're on say you're on like, I don't know, 2,000 life points as well. Well, your opponent attacks the set Fiber Jar with their card, and then everything gets shuffled back in the deck. Both players draw 5 cards, and, well, now all your opponent has to do, if your opponent's already normal summoned, if your opponent's gone through all special summons, and if your opponent's drawn nothing that will allow them to summon more, is normal summon any card in their hand with more than 1,000 attack points and attack for game. Fiber Jar's flip effect is a reset button that can literally end an opponent's turn and just be done with it. That's the first one. The second scenario is, say either player is playing a deck that banishes. Well, you flip the Fiber Jar, those banished cards don't go back into deck. Those banished cards stay banished. So, say you're playing a deck that purely revolves around the banished zone. Say you're banishing tons of cards, or you're playing against a deck that plays like Macrocosmos that banishes all of your cards, but then all of the trap cards, or even D-Fissure, for instance, Dimensional Fissure, and then you activate D-Fissure. Well, Fiber Jar doesn't shuffle back the banished cards. So any deck that revolves around banishing cards in your opponent's deck, or any deck that banishes your own cards to get advantage, instantly either gains advantage or loses to this card. Because if you're playing a deck that revolves around banishing cards, that revolves around banishing all cards on the board, in the graveyards, on the fields, and relies on having nothing left, well, Fiber Jar literally just states, I flip my Fiber Jar, all your other cards can go back to deck, but all your monsters, all those cards that are in your banish zone, now they stay in the banish zone, and now you have less resources in your deck to be able to play the game. Now, if you're playing a deck like Thunder Dragons, though, where you flip the Fiber Jar and then shuffle everything back from your graveyard, field, and hand into the deck, then draw 5 cards. Now, if you've got a Thunder Dragon Dark already banished, if you've got a Thunder Dragon Raw already banished, and if you've got even a Thunder Dragon Fusion in your hand that you drew, well, guess what? You flip that card, you now get these 5 new cards in your hand. That could be a Thunder Dragon Hawk, a Thunder Dragon Fusion, just a general Thunder Dragon card that will allow you to gain access to the banish zone, and you instantly have an advantage in that game state, where it's just like, oh, if I play a deck that revolves around banishing and gains advantage from the banish zone, then Fiber Jar is really great for me. But also, if I'm playing a deck that just banishes my opponent's stuff and then I flip the Fiber Jar, well, all those good cards that would have gone back into the deck don't go back into the deck. So it's just like, Fiber Jar is a really insane card when you think about it, right? It says banishing is really good for some decks and really bad for other decks. It says I may be able to reset the game, but I don't reset life points. I don't touch the banish zone. Each player draws 5 cards, and if I'm flipped during the battle phase, well, that can literally just be the opponent's end phase from there. So it's just like, Fiber Jar is a really, really insane card and should never come back into the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. And especially seeing as there's cards that can abuse this really easy, such as a card called Book of Tayo, where you literally just set the Fiber Jar, activate the spell card Book of Tayo, and then flip the Fiber Jar and reset the game from there. Like, little cheesy stuff like that can really be used in this game, and Fiber Jar being a card that literally just says, shuffle all cards from the hand, field, and graveyard into the deck, and then both players draw 5, is really insane. And also when you think about it, guys, if you flip a Fiber Jar, and you've been playing like a 10-20 minute game 1, this is gonna double that time, so yeah, that's another reason why this card can't come back. It will literally make games even longer. Banished decks get so much advantage, or just really just beat a load of decks to the ground. And just the fact that it will really just ruin so many players, even if they have less life points than you, or even if you have less life points than them, then you can just OTK them. It's just like, Fiber Jar is absolutely insane and should definitely never come back. But let's go on to the next one so we can talk about that. Alright, at number 4, the 4th card that should really never come back into the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG is Royal Oppression, a continuous trap card. And you guys are probably thinking right now, a trap? A trap card? Are you sure? Because trap cards aren't really that great in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! You know, like, the only ones that are really good are, like, Evenly Matched and Infinite Impermanence, because they can be activated from the hand. But guys, you're gonna listen to this, and you're gonna think, oh, yeah, he's right. So, guys, first of all, let's read what Royal Oppression does. So, Royal Oppression is a continuous trap card that says, either player can pay 800 life points to negate the special summon of a monster, monsters, and /or an effect that special summons a monster and destroy those cards. Now, you're probably thinking, both players can use this effect, so if I wanted to negate my opponent's special summon with their Royal Oppression, I could. That's pretty balanced. And yeah, the card is technically really balanced. The card does say both players can use it, and one person has to take up spell and trap card zone to be able to use it. Now, that you would probably think, yeah, that's really balanced and really good, but oh guys, in today's Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, if this card came back from the ban list, oh boy, would this be dumb. Now, pretty much, guys, you're going to have to look at it like this. Say your opponent is playing a combo deck, and they play the 1 Royal Oppression, or free if it was up free in the TCG. Now, if your opponent makes a board of 5 negates, and sets Royal Oppression, how do you out that? How do you out a board that has, say, a Boros Savage, a Herald of the Arclight, Appaloosa, maybe 1 or 2 other monsters to negate things, and you have the Royal Oppression set? The answer? You can't. You really can't out that kind of board. And when you really look at Royal Oppression to be a card that just says, either player can pay 800 life points, 10 special summon negations, well, if your opponent's already special summoned a ton of cards, it's not going to work. Your opponent is going to literally have a board that's already set up to be able to OTK you. Your opponent is going to have negates on the board to be able to stop you from killing them. They're going to just continuously pay 800 to negate every one of your special summons. Like, if you were to activate Royal Oppression in today's TCG, like, the card literally just says, well, cool. I have my board already. You can attempt to build your board, but my Royal Oppression is just going to stop you from playing the game. So, is there any real reason from playing the game? And Royal Oppression is just a really dumb card for that reason. The fact that you can literally just build your own board first, then pass your turn with the Royal Oppression set, then flip the Royal Oppression on the special summon of a monster, or the activation of a card that would special summon, is just dumb. The card literally says, oh, I'm a trap card, yes, and I'm a dumb trap card, yes, but I can literally just set up a board right away, even though it's balanced. Like, this card is technically really balanced in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. Being able to let both players negate it, the person who activates it has to take up one of their spell and trap card zones. It is technically a balanced card in theory, But when you take into account the rest of the TCG as well, this card is absolutely insane. Like, legit, just having the ability to make a board of negates and then put on top of that this, it's not fair. It literally just means no one's able to play the game, and it's just not going to work. So Royal Oppression is definitely a card that can never come back into the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. Even if this card was errated, I would still think they would have to put some clause in it that says, if you want to activate this card, you have to control no monsters, or something like that, because, like, in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game now, this card would not be able to be played, and it's just absolutely insane to think that this card exists. Like, literally, no one can do anything to this card. Like, legit, just stop any special summon for 800 life points 10 times. It's absolutely dumb. And yeah, let's go ahead and go on to number 3 though, so we can go ahead and talk about that. So, number 3, the third card that should never come back into the TCG is Delinquent Duo. And for you people out there who know what Delinquent Duo is because you play GOAT format, you're probably all saying, yeah, we agree with you, Delinquent Duo should never come back. And this card should definitely never come back because it's a very simple card that can net you so much advantage on turn 1 for literally just paying 1,000 life points. It's absolutely insane. So what this card does is you pay 1,000 life points, your opponent discards 1 card at random. So you discard 1 random card from your opponent's hand. And if they have any other cards in their hand, discard 1 more card of their choice. So pretty much what this card says is, oh, I'm going to discard a card from your hand at random. Then you, if you have any more cards in your hand, have to discard another one of your own choice. So you get to choose, right? Kind of balanced when you think about it. Oh, I discard 1 at random, then you get to choose 1, you get to discard. Sounds pretty good. Nah, this card's busted. Like, legit. Delinquent Duo is literally just a turn 1 discard 2. Imagine this card in any deck in the current game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Imagine this card in a hand loop deck. Imagine this card in any deck that can discard cards from your opponent's hand. This card would be absolutely insane. Like, legit, if you can play a hand loop deck that can hand loop your opponent's hand for up to 3 cards, and then you drop a Delinquent Duo on them, you've basically hand looped them with essentially like 3 cards. Because normally most hand loop card combos in the game right now are literally 2 card combos majority of the time, where you use like Smoke Grenade and some other forms of ways to discard cards from your opponent's hand. And having a card like Delinquent Duo, even in decks that aren't hand loop based decks, is absolutely insane, because you're literally taking 2 cards from your opponent's starting hand right before they can even play the game. Like, as soon as you activate this card, you could potentially be taking out hand traps, you could be taking out combo pieces, you could be taking out very vital cards that your opponent needs to actually play the game without even doing absolutely anything. That's why this card is so broken and should really never come back. It's literally just a free, oh, I discard 2 cards from your hand for nothing, and you still have 4 other cards to work with. Literally, Delinquent Duo is potentially one of the most broken discard cards in the game, like legit, just because the card says discard 2. Like, there are other cards on the banned list, like Confiscation and Forceful Sentry, that also get rid of cards from your opponent's hands, but this card should never come back to the TCG for the pure fact that it says discard 2. Having a card that literally just says, I'm going to discard 2 cards from my opponent's hand is not fair. It should never return to the game because the amount of advantage it takes away from your opponent on the turn 1 in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Game. And yes, in GOAT format, this is balanced. GOAT format is a very control-based game where you have a lot of back and forths, but in any other format, nah, this card, in the current TCG, this card cannot come back. It's so insane. We have so many ways to hand loop, like Moon and Glacier, Smoke Grenade, all these other cards that could just really be abused to hand loop opponents. This card would just make hand looping even more degenerate and really should not come back. But that's number 3. Let's actually go on to the next one though, because that one's a doozy. So at number 2, the second card that I think that should never come off the ban list is Last Turn. And Last Turn is another trap card, guys, but this card is inherently more broken than the other 3 cards. And that's because this card says you can either force a draw in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Or you can just win the game right there. Now, let's go ahead and read what this card does. So, Last Turn is a normal trap card. This card can only be activated during your opponent's turn when your life points are 1,000 or less. Select one monster on your side of the field and send all other cards on the field and in their respective owner's hands to the graveyard. So just to let you guys know, it discards both players' hands for this effect. After that, your opponent selects one and special summons one monster from their deck in face-up attack position and attacks your opponent's monster. This is not the battle phase, they just both attack in the main phase. It's kind of like a special battle phase. Any damage from this battle is treated as 0, so you take no battle damage. The player whose monster remains alone on the field at the end of phase of this turn wins the duel. Any other case results in a draw. Now, guys, you're probably reading this and thinking, oh, so pretty much if I'm on 1,000 life points or less, I have a chance to win again. And I have to activate this during my opponent's turn, so it's like, oh, cool, I can, like, come back. But this card is dumber than you think, guys. A lot of this card's effects are done in separate parts. For starters, the first part of its effect, where you need to have less than 1,000 life points to actually activate this card's effect. Well, that's just the activation clause. The next part is, select one monster on your side of the field and send all other cards to the graveyard. Now, that's also a separate part of the effect. So, literally, all cards in owner's hand in the field goes to the graveyard. That is a separate part. And then the next part of that is also a separate part of this card's effect, where your opponent gets to special summon one monster from the deck. And then the final part, where the battle phase and the winner comes in, is also a separate part of the effect. All of these are separate parts of the effect on this trap card that can happen separately. And you're probably thinking, oh, well, what does that exactly mean? Well, let me just tell you this. If you have a Fossil Dino on the board and you flip last turn, your opponent doesn't get to special summon and you just win the duel. You know why? Your opponent can't special summon because of the Fossil Dino, and you can activate this card if a Fossil Dino is on the board. So pretty much what this card says, if I have a Jowgen, if I have a Fossil Dino, if I have a Vanity's Fiend, well, I instantly win the duel. You can't special summon, so it's absolutely done from there. You know why else this card shouldn't come back though? Not just because of that reason alone, because there are monsters that can prevent special summoning and this card just abuses that, but because legit this card can initiate a draw and also just it wipes the board in both players' hands. Like, literally, a card that says, I'm either going to win the game, I'm either going to draw the game, or I'm just going to lose the game, is not fair in one card. Having a card that can literally say, if you can't special summon, you can't use that card's effect, is dumb. Literally, if your opponent can't special summon with this card on board, they lose the game on the spot. This card says, if both monsters kill each other, both players draw. And this card says, oh, I just get to initiate a draw, or I get to initiate a win just for free, is insane. Like, how does a card exist that says, oh, I'm either going to make it a draw so we go to game 4, or I'm going to make it a win so I just win the game? And that's absolutely insane to me. Like, legit, obviously you wouldn't go into game 4 nowadays, it would just be a draw overall, but it's just like, that's absolutely insane to me. And last turn is definitely a card that should never come back in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, because it's just such a complicated card to have in the game, where it literally just says, oh, if you perform the first part of this effect and you have a Fossil Dino, you can't perform the next part of this effect, but then the last part of its effect still happens where the player wins the duel. And also just the fact that it's a card that can initiate a draw, and any card in the game that really can initiate a draw, like self-destruct button for instance as well, is a card that shouldn't exist in the game. So it's just like, how is a card like this fair? How is a card like this in the game? And honestly, Konami, what were you thinking when you made last turn back in the day? Like, obviously back in the day it wasn't as dumb as it probably was. Like, even I don't know if Jowgen and this card were out at the same time, but legit, just this with Jowgen or this with Fossil Dino is just absolutely insane, and really is a card that should never ever come back into the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. So yeah, that's the second card though, that should really never come back into the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. Let's go on to the last card that we're going to be talking about. Alright, so the number one card in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game that should never come back, in my personal opinion, is Painful Choice. Painful Choice is a normal spell card that says, select 5 cards from your deck and show them to your opponent. Your opponent selects one card among them, add that card to your hand, and discard the remaining cards to the graveyard. Now, you're probably looking at this card and thinking, huh, so Your opponent gets to choose the card that you add to your hand. That doesn't seem too broken, but guys, this card is absolutely insane. This card says you can add one of these 5 to your hand, but you send the rest to the graveyard. Do you know what that means? That means any deck in the Yu-Gi-Oh game that gains advantage from sending cards to the graveyard and still getting one card out of those 5 is absolutely broken alone by this card. You activate Painful Choice in, say, Burning Abyss. Burning Abyss get to send 4 cards from their deck to the graveyard and get to add 1 Burning Abyss to their hand. All of those Burning Abyss monsters will trigger and will get their effects. You activate this card in Salamangreat. You reveal 2 Spinny, you reveal Foxies, you reveal any Salamangreat you can summon from the graveyard. This card will trigger those cards' effects and allow you to special summon them from the graveyard. You use this card in Dinosaurs, you reveal multiple Miscellaneous Sauruses. You don't need to reveal just one of the copy. You can reveal as many copies of a one card you want, which is also insane with this card. And you can reveal like 2 Miscellaneous Sauruses or with some dinosaur monsters. You can then trigger that Miscellaneous Saurus and summon a level 1 dinosaur that will summon search UTC, or you can banish the other 4 dinosaurs and then summon a soul-eating Oviraptor. You could legit use this in any deck that can utilize the graveyard, any deck that will get triggered effects when sent to the graveyard by a card effect or just sent to the card graveyard in general. Painful Choice is a card that literally says, I'm going to break so many decks in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG by myself that I'm just going to be too fast for you to even realize it. Painful Choice is absolutely insane. It is a card that should never, ever be brought back into the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. And I sound really serious right now because this card is absolutely insane. This card is broken, this card is dumb, this card should never come back into Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. If this card was ever errated, this card should literally be you cannot activate any cards for like the next 4 turns if you were to use this, or any of the cards sent to the graveyard cannot activate their effects, or any card in the graveyard cannot be used for this turn. You would literally need to add some dumb clause onto Painful Choice to even make it balanced, and personally, I just feel like this card is the most broken card on the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG ban list right now. Now, obviously, guys, this is only the #1 choice, in my opinion, that should never come back into the game. There are tons of other cards that really shouldn't come back as well, such as Firewall Dragon and a lot of others that are on the ban list. Pot of Greed, Graceful Charity, Forceful Sentry, Confiscation, all of that stuff should never come back into the TCG, but these 5 in particular, to me, just should never come back. They would be absolutely broken in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG if they ever did come back. And I just personally feel like these are the 5 that I would never allow to re-enter the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. But, guys, that's the video, though. Tell me what your thoughts are on these 5 banned cards in the comment section below. Is there any cards on the ban list that you think should never come back that wasn't on this list? Is there anything that maybe you would change about this list about cards that should never come back? Like, maybe you want one of these cards to come back. Maybe Fiber Jar if you want to be resetting the game constantly. Maybe Delinquent Duo if you want to see maybe the advantage and get hands change a lot. Maybe you want to just be one of these people out there who want the really dumb stuff in the game that shouldn't be allowed in the game, and if you do, you should just go play GOAT format or previous formats in the game so you're not ruining it for the current Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. But guys, that's the video though. Tell me your thoughts on this video in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on other banned cards as well. I do kind of want to make a video just talking about every banned card as well, guys, so that might come in the future. But that's the video for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Check out the links in the description to my Twitch channel. I'm going to be streaming there on Mondays now from probably 8 PM onwards, and then the rest of the week I might be streaming on YouTube different days. But guys, that's the video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Robert1 signing out. These cards should never come back. Never.